the height of the Avenue on a Saturday night, if you're there in the 1930s, 40s, into the 1950s, it was a city that was moving 24 hours a day. You know, you could see music late at night, on into 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Then you might even catch like an early morning jam session.
Indianapolis had a wonderful history of jazz and the music scene. Like many cities across the country, Kansas City, 18th and Vine, Harlem, and New York City, Indianapolis had Indiana Avenue. You had clubs develop along the Indiana Avenue, George's and Henry's and Sunset Terrace.
And Sunset Terrace was a tour stop for the biggest and most important bands in America and even the world at that time. But I really think of the Walker as giving some of the local talent here a really great platform to grow as artists.
And the young people here would see that talent and see those people come to Indianapolis and say, hey, I can do the same thing.
The other thing that I think that really has helped the music scene here is just all of the great music education that we've had.
You had Ruth MacArthur and her music conservatory. So many artists you hear about, like J.J. Johnson, can trace their roots back to the teachers at Crispus Attucks High School.
We have 3 iconic musicians that have come from Indianapolis. J.J. Johnson, who is the definition of jazz trombone. Wes Montgomery is the definition of jazz guitar. Freddie Hubbard redefined jazz as it is today on trumpet.
Wes Montgomery had to be good because he had to fill seats in a club where next door there was a guitarist who was probably just as good as him packing the club out.
There were so many things that happened over the decades to kind of change Indiana Avenue and change what was happening in African American neighborhoods really all over the country.
So you had the expansion of 465, you had the expansion of IUPUI.
Desegregation was one of them. People that traditionally lived in the area moved out.
And people weren't locked in this neighborhood any longer and had an opportunity. You saw the clubs and the people moving north, first to 34th Street. You know, from Northwestern, which is now MLK, to Meridian, there were many jazz clubs like the Hubbub Lounge, Mr. B's Pomp Room.
The businesses then did not thrive as much because you didn't have as many people living in that neighborhood.
Despite what happened on the Avenue, that didn't kill the jazz scene. The spirit of jazz is still very much alive in Indianapolis.
There is a wonderful scene currently going on in Indianapolis. It really hasn't stopped. It's just all over the city.
We see that in a younger generation of musicians like Clint Breeze and the Groove, Premium Blend.
And there's a great vocalist, Bashir Assad.
Native Son.
Bill Langton.
Charlie Ballantyne, great guitar player.
Kenny Phelps.
There's a group called the Tucker Brothers.
Everett Green.
Amanda Gardier's awesome saxophonist. It's just like the list goes on and on. I think young people are coming to jazz, but I think they're coming around to it kind of in a different way.
The jazz scene here is thriving and growing in unique ways through these groups, melding these sounds in these different worlds. They're introducing jazz music to a whole new generation. So you can go out to Fountain Square, to a punk rock club, and hear a jazz set from Clint Breeze and the Groove performed to a bunch of kids who love hip-hop music. It's really beautiful. You can see the same thing with Premium Blend at the Chatterbox, you know, on a weekend night.
I see it all the time. I go to places and they know about like these fusion jazz groups, you know, that are happening now, and I think it's a very exciting time for jazz.
Although Indiana Avenue isn't here, the spirit continues in this generation of musicians.